Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are going to be talking about tech resolutions for 2022 because, well, let's be serious. 2 years ago, we kind of thought this was cute. We were at home watching movies, hanging out with our families in quarantine for the first 2 weeks. And 2 years later, we realized, oh man, we really haven't changed our intentional use of tech much, and maybe there are some habits that are just horrible for our families and for our purpose and potential in Christ, and we need to make some changes, but we don't know where to start. The reason I think that that's going on is I've been getting a lot of messages from parents or people just bring it up in conversation like, yeah, I know this isn't okay and I have no idea what to do. And we're busy and we're a little bit overwhelmed and we just kind of want to know, like, is this actually a problem? Do I need to do anything about this? And if so, how? I actually had a family just offer me a blank check. Like, we will pay you whatever it takes for you to come into our house, set up our smartphones and our devices, right? And while that is very touching and I appreciate that their heart is in the right spot, right, I refuse to do that right now. My job is to make sure that I am equipping you guys to know how to do it. And that's what today's podcast is about. How can I help you walk away from today's conversation confident that you know how to begin this conversation and the next steps you can take? You may not know every app. You may not know every device, but you are going to be confident that you can disciple and love your children in a tech world where you're at today, because I promise you can, and you can actually do it better than Nathan walking into your house and just setting a bunch of stuff up and then walking away. This is actually going to be a more beneficial process because it gets to the heart of it, and it gives you the hope that comes in Christ with it, not just relying on technology to try to keep your kids good enough, which in the end of the day, it just makes little tech ninjas who, if they really want to make a mistake, will make a mistake. So we want to get more to their hearts and win them that way. So with that in mind, let's get this conversation started. Welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast, a resource for parents who are feeling outpaced and overwhelmed as they raise children in a tech world. As an educator, parent, and tech user, I want to equip parents with the tools, resources, and confidence they need to raise kids who love God and use tech. Thank you to everyone who has made this podcast possible, to everyone who listened in 2021, who shared, and who's left a review. Thank you, guys. If you've not yet left a review out of a rating out of 5 stars, please do so. You can just scroll down to the bottom. There's a little 5-star spot. You can do that. If you have not subscribed, please do that. You'll get our new podcast sent directly to you. And if you would be so kind as to leave a 1 or 2 sentence review, you scroll all the way down to the bottom. It's in iTunes or the Apple podcast. It's these little purple letters. It just says, write a review. And that helps people find us, and it's an amazing blessing to us. It also helps us know how we're helping you, which is great. If we're not helping you and you want a better product, write me, nathan@gospeltech.net, and I would love to use that feedback to improve this product and resource. So today we are talking resolutions. And I don't know about you, but resolutions can be tough because, well, sometimes we just don't keep them. And I think a big reason behind that is resolutions fail. Resolutions fail because we don't make resolutions. Oftentimes we make intentions, more like wishes, right? I know that that's something that I do. So I have lots of things I wish would happen. And it might be, maybe I get more fit or exercise more. Maybe it's I do my work better. Maybe it's I disciple my children better. Maybe it's I grow a couple inches, right? Those are intentions. I intend for these things to happen. And maybe I even write them down, but then they don't happen. And people always say, well, if you just write it down, then it like magically occurs. And that's not true. Like that's not what happens because there's no plan. As soon as you add a plan to an intention, now we have a resolution. And this doesn't mean that you only are successful if you get that resolution done. And I want to pause here. Many of us set a goal and we say, all right, I want to lose 10 pounds by July, right? I want that summer weather body. We're going to lose 10 pounds by July. And you get July and you lost 3 pounds, or you gained 3 pounds. And at that point, you decide if you were a success or a failure based on your resolution, which actually isn't the point of a resolution. The point isn't the goal. The point is the process. So if your goal is to be more fit, to be more healthy, you can set that goal and then you're going to have to track it as you go. And from week to week, right, you're probably going to need to track what you do for exercise, what you consume, right? And in the process, all sorts of stuff is going to come to the surface, right? You're going to realize, like me, that you might get irresistible urges for certain snack foods when you're stressed. Isn't that crazy? I had no idea until the last couple of years that was even an option, but it turns out it is. And I need to trust the Lord with those urges, because otherwise I will go and find all those delicious foods in my pantry and I will feel good for like 20 minutes until I realize what I just did to myself, right? And that is now a process goal of, okay, part of my becoming healthy is I need to trust the Lord with my hope and joy when I'm stressed. Like, all right, now I have to pray into that. And it turns out that simply trying to feel better doesn't work. So now I need to put in my quiet times and my prayer times. And I actually need exercise to take some of that energy. And all of a sudden now I have these practices put in place because I resolved to be more fit. And it turns out it helps other areas. And that's what we're talking about today with technology, is we are not simply putting down ironclad processes that will make no one in your family ever make a mistake. Instead, we're building up resolutions. We're building up processes with goals that are going to help us establish healthy tech in our family. And more important than just healthy tech, but healthy conversations about tech, right? Because we can get healthy tech just by avoiding it altogether, right? Like, my kid's never going to abuse video games because they're never going to see one. That's fine. But eventually your child will enter a world that's made of video games, and video games are only growing. They're making their way into education. They've already eclipsed the NBA, the NFL, and Major League Baseball all combined when it comes to annual income from just esports. Just the amount of money being made from people watching people play video games. If you didn't know that was a thing, I'm glad I got to tell you. There's an entire social media platform built around it called Twitch. YouTube is big into it, and esports, where you play video games competitively. It can be soccer. It could be a first-person shooter like Call of Duty or Overwatch, but it's here and it's going to stick around because it's making money, and companies are diving into it, and major franchises like the New England Patriots and the 76ers have purchased esports teams. And so they're in it. So the point of that, the only reason I even bring up esports is this idea that when we talk about resolutions, we need to make sure that they're process focused. Just saying, my kid's never going to deal with that means they're going to walk into a world where this technology is now prevalent and even ubiquitous, and they may not have the survival mechanisms they need to discuss it. You don't have to let your kid play video games, but you have to talk about video games with your kid, right? It's part of the world that they're going into, right? So we need to be intentional. We need to be resolved, which just means have those intentions with a plan. So here we go. 3 questions that I get that I want to give you the opportunity to resolve to. The first is, what can I do to rein in tech that is out of control? So we are resolved to have healthful tech, but how do we get there? Okay, first thing, how do we get healthful tech? We need to assess what is actually out of control. Here at Gospel Tech, we use an acronym called RESET, and it just means we look at our technology, recognizing that there's tool tech that helps us make things and drool tech that helps us consume things. The main difference between those two is that drool tech is designed to engage you. So it's there to take your focus, to take your time, and to get you to invest more of your resources in it. That's how drool tech makes its money. The example might be Microsoft Word or Mac Pages, right? They don't have any engagement strategies. They're not trying to get you to use Pages or Word more. It's just there for when you need to write, and then you can walk away. Whereas Netflix or video games or music, anything with an algorithm that gives you a feed, right? That is something that wants you to stay longer because that feed is built to you, right? Even your news apps do this. So that would be tool and drool tech. So we look at that, and using RESET, we go, all right, what of this tech, does this tech impede? Does it get in the way of my relationships and responsibilities, my enjoyment, my sleep, my emotions, and my time? So RESET is an acronym: relationships and responsibilities, enjoyment, sleep, emotions, and time. And if I can go through that list of 5 and say, no, my technology, my child's technology, my spouse's technology does not impede any of these 5, then tech is not the problem. Okay, maybe something else is off, maybe a life issue is going on, but tech is not the thing that we need to be addressing. If, however, there's a 1 out of 5 and go, oh, you know what? I've been staying up late or waking up early or worried in the middle of the night or reading my phone before bed, and then I can't get to sleep because I'm all amped up. Then we can go, all right, it's a 1 out of 5, it's a 2 out of 5, it's a 5 out of 5, and I need to address this. And the reason I feel perfectly comfortable saying you can do this for people other than yourself is actually, if you're not sure how you do, or even if you are sure how you do, and you're like, no, my reset's 5, I'm a 0 out of 5, I would encourage you strongly to ask a family member if that's true. And let them know they're not going to be punished for answering you honestly, because kids are really intuitive about this when it comes to other people and specifically their parents. I know because I ask every group of kids, and raise your hand if you have a family member who's unhealthy. Raise your hand if that family member is a parent, right? And you're going to see hands go up. They know it, they see it, and it's part of what makes this conversation so valuable. So the first thing we say is, all right, we want our tech to be in control. Let's assess if tech is the problem. Let's use that reset. The second thing we have to do is we have to have a discussion on that. We use a reset not to condemn, not to shame, not to catch them in a corner and win a fight, but instead to say, no, I love you. You are someone put in my life, child, spouse, friend, or church member, right, who I care about. So I need to know, is this technology issue, is it the problem or is it a symptom? And the analogy I use for that is it a pebble or a blister? And the reason that is an image that sticks in my brain is when this last summer, Henry was 5, he's running around outside, and he starts complaining, or excuse me, let's start with Hadley. Hadley's running around outside. This is in the same week. Running around outside, and she's complaining about her foot hurting. I pull off her shoe, and sure enough, her little chubby 2-year-old feet have a little pebble jammed right in the middle, right? It didn't break any skin or anything. It's just jammed, made a little indent in her pudgy foot. So I pull it out, put the shoe back on, and she runs off. A few days later, Henry does the same thing at 5, and we pull off his shoe, and there's just a silver dollar-sized blister, right? Now, I could remove the rock and the problem went away, right? Hadley was perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. I cannot remove the blister because something else was causing the problem. Turns out Henry had run through a sprinkler with his shoes on and had not worn socks. So we got a double whammy. We got a lot of moisture, we got no sock for a buffer, and it just rubbed that foot completely raw, gave a big old fat blister that lasted, a week and a half. And those two things now have different solutions, right? I have to fix Henry's problem differently than I fixed Hadley's. And with technology, that's true, right? Sometimes there's anger or anxiety or sleep or focused issues that come just because the technology is causing it. And sometimes it's coming because there's some other thing and technology is the masking agent. It's what the kid turns to because of this other situation. Maybe there's a bully, maybe there's mental health, maybe there's just general growing pains of life and relationships that need to be and can be lovingly addressed, either professionally or by family. And that is where we got to start. Okay, so first we've assessed with reset. Second is we, in discussion, said, son or daughter, I love you very much. I can see that in your life, it seems like technology is impacting your commitments, right? You're skipping family dinners, or you're staying up late, or you're missing out on school, or you stopped playing sports, right? Like you say those words to your young person. And this can be probably this form of conversation as young as like 8, right? And then ask them, because by 8, they're going to have some words to be able to discuss some of these emotions, right? Just say, hey, do you see that happening? Or what do you see is going on? Or what's going on in your brain when this happens, right? So we're trying to prompt them to speak and listen, okay? We're not trying to fix them. We're just trying to assess, is tech the problem or is this masking some other thing that's going on in life? Once we've assessed that, then we can take our action. So there's 4 things you can do today. First thing, get tech out of the bedroom. If it is a tool or a drool tech, it should not be in the room, other than like a base alarm clock. So we'll just say all drool tech is an outright removed, which means smartphones. You don't need a smartphone for an alarm clock. You need an alarm clock for an alarm clock. You can find on our social media, by the way, a great alarm clock. It's $30 from Amazon. It could be there by the end of this podcast. So, or at least close to it, because Amazon's quick. Get all tech out of the bedroom. That's our first thing to get control if there's a problem. The second is have accountability on your home and personal devices. I call this building a hedge, but it's just giving yourself that little bit of a buffer for when life goes off the rails, the mistakes aren't going to be as high or as long-lasting because you're going to be there for, again, the conversation, not for catching them, not for any aha moments, but for interceding and intervening when they're in over their heads, because we all need that as young people. We need that as adults. Sometimes we're just in over our head and we're making decisions we don't want to make, and we need someone to step in and lovingly go, you're out of control. Let me step in and love you. And in technology, that can happen quick. So accountability, I'll talk in a little bit about what that should look like. That's actually the next 2. But the third is make a family tech framework. That means you need to have a unified base for how to even talk about this stuff. So absolutely today, get tech out of the bedroom, because that's how you can help your brains and your hearts right now. And then you can get some accountability on there, because that's a way to amend and to start to augment the overall health of the tech environment in your home. You can stop the negative influences. You can intervene in unhealthy situations. You can increase the amount of conversation that's happening, because it's no longer anonymous, because there is accountability, and that's very loving. But the Family Tech Framework is how we actually go forward and connect the gospel. It's because this framework is gospel-centered that we can say, hey, these are shows we do and don't watch because of who God is and how much he loves us. These are things we do and don't say because of who God is and that he first loved us. We're extending love from that, right? This is how we use technology. We add anything that's going to build up this framework around the gospel, and we remove anything that tears it down, right? It gives you a really easy way to fight for your family rather than trying to establish all these rules on them and make them feel like you're somehow becoming the digital police of their lives. And the third is we remove and we replace. And this is coming out of Matthew 5 and Matthew 18, where Jesus just simply says, if it causes you to sin, cut it off and gouge it out. Once you've assessed tech health and you've assessed and established family framework based on the gospel, you remove and you replace. The family framework, by the way, we have a 2-hour online workshop if you want to do it. I do live workshops, but if you want to do this on your own because you live in a state or nation that I can't visit right now, you can go gospeltechworkshop.com. I'll mail you a workbook when you order it, and you can. It's $50. It's a 2-hour workshop. It has a PDF, so you can do it with your family. You can order enough and do it with a small group at your church. And when I do live workshops, churches often will do that as the next thing. So I'll do like a parent and a kid workshop, and then they'll have these workbooks and roll those out into small groups. And the idea there is simply the application. Like I said, the application of the gospel. First half establishes tool and rule tech and all the big tech conversation. And the second half is application. And you can do, all the videos are, you could watch them all and do the work in 2 to 3 hours tops, like if you did it all in one go. So that's an option if you want to build that family tech framework. And that's why we made that resource, was so that families could do it. So then, all right, so to review, let's just make sure. We've assessed tech health based on reset. We know if it's a pebble or a blister, and we have those 4 action steps. Get it out of the bedroom, make some accountability at home, have a framework so that we are driving this conversation and we're being present in it, and we remove anything unhealthy and we replace it with healthy stuff. Cool. By the way, on the healthy stuff side, if you want to go back, you can look up Analog Adventures, and that's the conversation on what do we do instead of unhealthy tech. So then the second resolution that stems from this question of, all right, well, how do I protect my home internet? And the third is going to be, how do I protect personal devices? So how do I protect my home internet? We are resolved to have accountable technology at home. First thing you do is you need Bark. Okay, this is if we're spending the money that it was required to have home technology, be that your gaming devices like an Xbox or a PlayStation, a smart TV, just regular streaming on any regular TV, laptops, smartphones, tablets. If we have these things and we've invested the resources required, we need to invest to have accountability. So Bark is our best option. Bark.us. There's really 3 reasons. The first is it monitors online content and activity. So it can let you know if something unhealthful or unhelpful has been accessed online, which then allows a conversation about that, which is what we want, which then allows you to know what needs to be removed and replaced. So that's solid. The second is it allows time limits. The time limits simply being we need to know what is and isn't appropriate in our terms of time use. So how early, how late, what time of day can we access this stuff? And the third is that it is able to be mobile, so you can roll that into your mobile devices, which will come up in a minute. But if you don't want the monthly subscription piece, Bark is a monthly subscription. You can just go bark.us if you want to check it out. There is a monthly subscription if you want something that's just static. So you get it and it's a one-time purchase. They don't have the active monitoring, but Circle is great. It's a device you plug right into your home network, and it allows you to put parental controls, time controls. It allows you to block certain apps and websites, those kinds of things. So that is useful. And the Griffin router. So if you go Griffin Connect, Gryphon, connect.com, It's a Wi-Fi router, which means it puts the internet through the air all over your home. And it has an amazing app that really, that was the third thing. When I said it had the mobile option, the app is incredible on Bark. Sorry, I'm all over the place today, folks. First day back in the year. But the Bark, the mobile app is incredible for parents. It's super easy to use, and that's why Circle and Griffin have dropped lower on my list, because while I really believe in their product, I continually get parents who are like, hey, I'll pay you to come do this for me. So I'm trying to make it just as accessible. You can do it tonight. You can buy the app on your phone and implement it instantly. I like that. So Bark does come with a monthly subscription, but that app is huge and it's very intuitive. You can click on what you want to have blocked. You can set your timelines by user. You can see everyone who's using it, and you get notifications when things go awry. Otherwise, Circle and Griffin Router are awesome. And third and finally, so that's how we protect our home internet. Then we have our personal devices. As part of building our hedge, we need all of our smartphones, all of our tablets to be accountable. And specifically when I say personal devices, I'm talking to those devices that have cell service. Griffin and Circle and Bark, those are all wonderful for devices that are on a single network. So I come home and I'm on my Wi-Fi. That's your network. But what about when I leave and I have this device that can just turn off Wi-Fi and go use its cell service, and now I have no idea, right? It's just a black hole. Anything could be happening. I have no idea. I hope it's good, but do I just wait until I smell smoke? How do I know that something's wrong? And this is where protecting your smart device is important. So let's start from the beginning. First, don't give your kid a smartphone. That's going to be the easiest. I understand many of you already have. You may have just done it a couple days ago for Christmas, but that's our number one. If you want to give your kid a phone, give them an actual phone. Gab Wireless has a great phone. It has some GPS options. It allows you to see your child's location, and it allows them to text and call, but not send or receive images, not access an app store, not be on the internet. So good for education, good for safety, good for your kid actually being a kid. Cool. Wise Phone is another option, especially for adults. Kid phone or the Gab phone can be more of a kid-directed phone, so it's a little more candy-colored and a little more like big, chunky app tokens when you're clicking through it. May not be something you want to pull out at a business meeting. Wise Phone looks exactly like a smartphone because it is a smartphone. They take whatever the newest iPhone or Android device and they strip it down and they put their proprietary software on it. So that is a great option. It has some really useful, the Wise Phone has some really useful app options as well for the parent to be able to keep the device safe. Second piece, if you're going with a smartphone, is make sure it's an Android device. That means not Apple. Android. Samsung is the company I like because it's not Google and it's not Apple. So you can do what you would like with that, but if you're getting a Android or a smartphone, Android is the best because they allow the programs and apps for accountability to actually access all parts of the phone. Whereas, say, on an iPhone, there's another 4 or 5 steps with setting up family safety networks and shutting down the app store and limiting which apps can be on there because some apps have silly little backdoors that allow them to get on the internet anyway. So I would say go Android. But if you have a smartphone and it's an Android, Bark Mobile, still your number one option because it's going to work at home and it's going to work on these devices through a single login. It's simple. It's got the best interface for this kind of technology, and it's the easiest for parents to use who do not feel comfortable working with hardware, plugging things in, managing multiple passwords, that kind of stuff. So bark.us is going to be your jam. And it's going to allow you, again, accountability. This isn't about being a police state for our kids. It's not about trying to fix them, but it's about recognizing that the digital world is real. There's a lot of benefits on it, and there's a lot of distractions and dangers out there, from bullies to pornography to simply just content that can deal with self-harm and suicidal ideations and drugs and just big conversations that we want to be there for, and Bark is set up to capture those. So it actually sees web searches and it sees texts, conversations going back and forth, and it can simply notify red flag words and phrases, which is great. Stranger danger, things like that. If your child may not be aware that someone is actually unsafe as an individual, Bark can help pick up on those and allow you to ask follow-up questions. So that's why Bark is great. But if you're not into Bark or you don't want the monthly subscription, Griffin, or I guess these are still monthly subscriptions. Griffin and Circle both have a mobile version, which is also solid, and it is mainly filtering focused. So you can set which websites they can go to. You can set times of day when they can access their device and the internet and things like that. But it does allow that same level of accountability and safety to go with them from home. Bark is just the most active because it has notifications and monitoring with it. So when we reach the end of this, we now don't just have good intentions like, man, I wish my kids' tech was safer. I hope that this year is a good year for our technology. We should, right, have more control over our technology because it's gotten out of control since 2020. Instead, what we just did is we made resolutions. We had 3 questions and we made plans for how to get there. First, what can I do to rein in tech if it's out of control? First, we got to assess, is it out of control? We use a reset. Then we determine, is it a pebble or a blister? And now we can take action, right? We get tech out of the bedroom. We make a hedge for our tech. We make a family framework and we remove and we replace. Remove the unhealthy and replace it with healthy. What do I do with the home internet? Bark, bark.us. That's it. Circle and Griffin Router are 2 amazing options that more tech-savvy individuals, I encourage you to look into them, weigh your options, and they don't come with monthly fees unless you go mobile. And what do I do with a smartphone? You don't give one to a kid because there's no benefit. Yes, they're going to be an adult at some point and choose their own. And by that point, they will have years of recognizing how much freedom and health they have not being on a smart device all the time. Mom and Dad, think about your lives without a smart device. How great would that be? Right? If your emails were not coming to your pocket, if notifications about that one friend in high school that you haven't talked to in 20 years, that they had a birthday, think if that wasn't showing up during dinner. Think about what would happen if your games weren't there, if your social media wasn't there, if your news wasn't there at all times. That's a boon, right? Let's give that to our kids who are kids and are still trying to process what it even looks like to have joy and to be loved and to love the Lord and to walk day by day in His paths. We want that to be as easy as possible. Let's avoid the smartphone. But if we've given one, let's make sure it's Android. Like literally go sell your iPhone back and get an Android device. By the way, they're paying top dollar right now for new devices. So you're not going to lose very much if you lose anything. And it's a lot cheaper than a good counseling session. So let's think about that. And then we can install Bark Mobile. Again, Bark is only so effective on an iPhone because it's not able to access the whole phone, but it's still a great option. Bark Mobile or the mobile version of either Griffin or Circle. And at that point, you're not just hoping for healthy tech, you're resolving to have healthy tech. And when mistakes happen, you're no longer in a spot of panic or of blaming yourself or shaming your child or yourself about something going wrong. You instead get to act in hope and say, child, I love you. I'm now intervening because I love you. And we're going to have this conversation and we're going to be on this journey together because I want you to love God and use tech. And it needs to be in that order. And anything that causes you to not love God, we're going to distance ourselves from until we figure out what's the problem, how can we go about this well, and what are the healthy things we can add back in. So I hope it's encouraging to you. I hope it's helpful. If it was, would you consider sharing this with somebody on social media? Personally, would you consider leaving a review? And would you join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech?